Ever feel like a consultant doesn't know what they're talking about when it comes to operations? You need someone that knows what you're dealing with. That's the experience that today's sponsor, the Breckham Group, brings to the table. Built by operators and engineers, they help you bridge the gap between strategy and execution inside your distribution center. Learn more about how their proven framework called Precision Supply Chain Operations can bring faster performance, greater efficiency, and real ROI at breckhamgroup.com. That's BRECHAM group.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Charlie Saffro, and she is the CEO and founder at CS Recruiting. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on from a talent perspective. What are we seeing in the hiring market? She's going to bring her insights here to talk about what's going on with hiring and talent in the industry, and also some tips too on how to kind of navigate, become a better manager, and some of her kind of culture forward thinking and how to develop that and increase employee engagement, which is critical within an operation within the warehouse to recruit and retain. And we'll hear a little bit about some of that from her as well. So Charlie, it's a pleasure to get you on the show today. How are you?
I am doing well. Excited for this chat. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to get you on. We talk a lot about labor and some of the struggles around labor here. So very interested to hear, how we can get more of that labor, good labor, I will say, and how we can retain it as well from you. So before we dive into that a little more, tell us a little bit about you and kind of what you do and CS Recruiting and how did you even get into this and start the business?
I fell into the industry like pretty much everyone else. It was not what I wrote down in third grade that I wanted to be when I grew up, but I'm perfectly happy with how it all ended up. So I am currently the CEO of a third-party recruiting firm that I started about 15 years ago. Long story short, my husband actually got into freight brokerage out of college. And this was, I'm not going to give you the exact dates because it will date me, but let's just say it was in the late 90s. And he had an idea for a technology that was essentially what we call a load board today. He used to call it like a match.com technology for the trucking industry. And after I spent about 6 years in marketing, I ended up going to work for my husband as he started this business to launch this technology. Very small company when I joined, about 8 people. They went through a huge growth spurt. Even though my background was originally in marketing, I kind of fell into the role of the recruiter. I had the capacity, I had the curiosity. So I started recruiting using Craigslist, if you could believe it or not, and hanging a lot of flyers at truck stops and coffee shops. And they ended up growing their business. I was their corporate recruiter for about 4 years as we grew our team. And then they sold to a larger company in the industry. And I spun off my own recruiting firm. So it was not planned. I didn't go out and get a loan or have a, fancy business plan. It was very organic, where I found myself out of work and I knew how to recruit in this industry. I was on LinkedIn right when it was taking off. So I was able to build a network, and the rest is history. So today I run about a 20-person recruiting firm. Most of us are in the Midwest, but we do work across all of North America, and we specialize exclusively in this industry. So I started really with an intimate focus in trucking and logistics. I'm in Chicago, so lots of opportunity in my backyard.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, over the first, I'd say 10 or so years, we quickly expanded. We started doing more work with asset-based companies, whether it was trucking or warehousing, which led us to doing more work with the shippers, so the manufacturers, the distributors. And today we are servicing clients that have any sort of hiring needs that connect back to logistics and supply chain. So when we think about these full supply chain, the roles that we work on are, as early as raw material procurement and planning through, the production, through the distribution, transportation, all the way to that final mile delivery. And we're touching everything in between. So we tend to specialize in professional and executive level positions, but obviously those roles are, very connected to the labor, to what's going on in the four walls of the warehouse. And I would say warehousing in general is a big chunk of our business, whether we are working for a provider or a company that happens to own a warehouse and manages their own production, distribution, storage, whatnot. So that's where we play today. We work on positions that have any connection back to the supply chain, working with hundreds of companies across the country and just trying to find the best talent. And then also worth noting that something really important to me is human-based leadership. And as I'm sure you can relate, we don't always see enough of that in this industry.
Yeah.
So very big on culture, treating people as humans and really getting to know who they are beyond their title. I think that is the secret to success in recruiting and retention, but obviously just in business overall.
Yeah, 100%. And as the sign behind you says, right? Be a nice human, right? Just be human.
Nice human. That's all it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and love the story there too. And I think it's an interesting thing where you were in marketing and you found yourself as a recruiter. But when I think about it, and when you say those two things together, I mean, a recruiter is marketing a little bit, right? I mean, but you're marketing like as the customer is like the potential hire, right? For you or something. So very interesting kind of the parallels there a little bit and how that worked out and obviously working very well for you as I see, right? So tell us a little bit about kind of, if we look at the warehousing logistics industry right now, what does the market look like for hiring? Are people actively hiring, aggressively hiring? Like what is going on right now?
It's confusing. And it has been confusing for the last couple of years. And I live and breathe in this space and I'm still confused, but it's a bit of a push and pull in the market. I mean, from a number standpoint, there are very clearly more job seekers than there are jobs right now. So when you look at it that way, hiring companies are in the driver's seat. They, have the luxury of having these openings and being able to really handpick the right person for the job. So very different than what we saw in maybe 2021, where there were, we called the great, resignation, and we saw more jobs than job seekers. But when you look at it that way on the surface, there's still a lot of nuances that we're seeing. And some of those nuances are, we've got these companies that are in the driver's seat, but candidates are starting to get really selective. We're seeing candidates, reject offers, and even unemployed candidates rejecting offers for, ethical reasons or reasons around integrity or just not being the right match. We're seeing a lot of hiring companies drag these processes out. We're seeing them kind of lowballing some of the, talented candidates. So it's confusing because while the employers have the upper hand, we're starting to get a little bit of pushback from the candidates. And it's just turning into a very interesting dynamic. I think at a very high level, the types of roles that we see tells us a lot of the story and what the trends are in the hiring market. So right now, we are seeing a lot of demand for sales positions, not super uncommon, but a bit uncommon for this part of the year. Usually by the time we get close to Q3, we've switched and we have a lot more operational demand because the revenue is there, the business is there. Now we need to support it. But given the economy in the last couple of years, it's not super surprising that a lot of companies just want revenue producers, and that can be at an independent contributor level all the way up to that executive level. And then other trends scattered throughout that, but I'd say that's probably the most notable trend we've seen.
Hmm. Very interesting, and interesting the like spike in sales desires, right? And I'm curious to that point. Do you see? Because I feel like over the last few years, I've certainly seen this in people that I've met at conferences and things where, especially on the sales side, right, or sales and marketing, I will say, like I see where there's people coming into the industry that had not previously been in the industry. And do you see more of that coming in from, I guess, from the candidate side in those sales types roles? And do you see like companies being more open to people that are not necessarily from the industry?
No.
No. Okay.
I wish my answer was yes. Right now, there's a huge focus on specialized talent, and
Okay.
it is in line with the trends we're seeing. I mean,
Yeah.
companies are hesitant. There's a lot of fear in the market. There's a lot of, instability and unpredictability. And so I think companies are really taking that idea of like, we are in the driver's seat and we are going to get the perfect person if we're going to invest in making a hire. So a lot of very specialized positions where, I'll give you an example from a warehousing space. If we were previously working on, let's just call it a distribution manager, somebody who's boots
Sure.
on the ground. Previously, they wanted someone who had distribution experience. They knew how to run a warehouse floor. They'd done that before. Now there's a shift where that's not quite enough. It's going to come down to like the actual commodity they're moving. So we're working on a search now that's in a temp controlled facility. And that is the number one requirement. They only want to see candidates that not only have experience with temp controlled freight and product, but specifically food and beverage. And so in the past where we have, maybe been able to surface talent that has, that expertise, but then also some really great just distribution talent, we're seeing clients that don't even want to look at the general resumes. Like they only want it's almost like they want that a la carte dish they ordered exactly how they want it, or they're not going to look. So you would think that just given the demand for revenue producers, if somebody was successful selling in another industry, they'd have an easy time transitioning in. I want to believe that that's true and those people could be successful, but it's getting past that initial decision maker. And those initial decision makers now have tall orders to find the unicorn candidate that checks off every single box. So I'm hoping in the future we'll see more, incoming into our industry from other industries. But I would say right now it's rare, and it's even more rare if a company was using a recruiter.
Interesting. That's very interesting. And I'm curious, what should the candidate take away from that? Like, how should they approach kind of that shift, and how do they position themselves to be a better candidate in that situation?
I think the riches are in the niches, like they say. And when you're working on your resume or preparing for an interview, like what is your expertise? And it could be in, a traditional environment, you really are strong at pricing, or you're really strong with the analytics or communication. And that's where some of these softer skills come in. So I would say it's a combination of really highlighting the area where you have developed. We want to see jargon on resumes. I think that's the easiest way to say it. Like if you are in a temp controlled facility, I want to see all those words: refrigerated, temperature controlled, temp controlled, climate control. Like that is how we are going to be able to find you. It's also going to be how our hiring manager probably evaluates you or makes that decision if they want to move forward. For candidates that don't have that much experience, I'd say lean on your soft skills. With so much unpredictability around AI and technology, I think soft skills like being adaptable, being resilient, being curious, those are some of the, highest demand skills right now, because that's coming down to like, who are you innately? Like who are you at your DNA? And if we can hire you based on those skills, we know that you'll be here to learn with us. And I think that's what the trend is right now, is we don't always know what's coming, but having resilience and being adaptable are probably the best skills we could bring to be prepared for it.
Yeah, definitely good tips there. And I'm curious on the specialization front, right? Because we've seen obviously just so much technology flooding into our industry now as well, whether it's AI or robotics or automation or things of that nature. Are you seeing more demand from hiring companies and the roles for looking for experience with those types of technologies?
Yes, but
Sure.
I'm usually a yes and person, but I'm going to say yes, but in that situation. I had an interesting conversation with the client just late last week where they are a very high tech logistics provider
Mm,
and they are looking for a leader. And when we started to talk about the qualities they wanted to see in this leader, I was, probing a lot about the technology and what types of skills and experience this person should have. And I was very impressed by their humility almost, because what they're focused on in this search is finding someone who has tribal knowledge of this industry. And those were the words they used.
mm,
They don't know where their technology is going. They have visions, they have plans, they have dreams, but with everything happening so fast, they really kind of, drew a line in the sand and said, we want someone who is a veteran in this industry, who has lived and breathed supply chain, who has a network and relationships, who really understands how evolved into this point. As far as the technology goes, that's a great to have, a nice to have. We want them to be interested. We want them to be motivated by it, but
mm.
we will surround them with the right engineers and the right developers, and we can teach them, we can train them, we can grow together. So I think that was a really important conversation for me to hear at this time, because it told me that, as much as these companies are focused on technology, it's hard to be an AI expert now. It was
Yeah.
hard to be an AI expert 6 months ago when it's all new. And is AI just chat GPT? That's pretty much what it feels like for a lot of our candidates right now. And we know that
Mhm.
there's so much more to it. So I'd say, yes, the unicorn candidate is, completely up to speed with everything going on with technology in this industry. But the truth is, I think candidates that have the years of experience, the interest, the passion, they're actually in a good position as long as they're willing to be curious, willing to be adaptable, willing to learn. It's that tribal knowledge that's of value right now.
Hmm. Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And that's I will say I was not expecting that answer,
Mhm.
because I would think that, with all the technology happening, like people might be looking for specific things around tech themselves, but that's a great point, right? And I think a value add to a tech forward organization, someone that knows like the traditional sense, right? And is able to understand like, okay, well, how do we take the tech and make sure it works with like, how operations are supposed to function? So very
Exactly.
interesting there. Yeah. And so from a skill perspective, I mean, you hear all the time, like candidates, they're looking to make a move, or they got laid off and now they're looking for something new. So they're like, oh, I want to up my skills now to be more attractive or something. I mean, is there one skill or a couple skills like that you hear requested the most that is something that somebody can invest in to try and become better at?
We'll be back after a quick break.
If your warehouse runs on sticky notes, crossed fingers, and one person who just knows where stuff is, it's time for Endpoint. They connect your shop, stock, and shipments so you can stop playing hide and seek with inventory, and Gary can take some time off. Get real-time visibility and your sanity back at endpointas.com. And if you upgrade your warehouse before December 31st, you can take advantage of no payments for 90 days and 0% financing for up to 36 months. You may also be eligible to deduct up to 100% of your qualifying investment under Section 179. Consult your tax advisor to confirm eligibility. Terms and conditions apply. Learn more at endpointas.com. That's endpointas.com.
Yeah, I mean, I think relationship building and I
Mm,
would say within that, the skills are being creative, being curious, being resourceful. Those types of skills fall within that. But at the end of the day, it's being human. And I think that's a really interesting point, especially as we talk more and more about technology. Technology is not going away. We can recognize that it will replace some human functions. It will supplement many more. But right now, I'd say the best skill people can have is knowing how to be human, knowing how and where to use technology to make humans better, faster, smarter, stronger, but not just necessarily looking at it as a replacement. So from a leadership standpoint, these individuals in the warehouse, whether they are surrounded by other humans or whether they're surrounded by bots, they're looking at this opportunity based on how their leadership treats them. And it comes down to respect. It comes down to trust. It comes down to communication, transparency. So I think those are a lot of the skills that we want to see right now. And it's wild because in this age of robotics and technology, the most important skill is being human. I actually have, just on a side story, I have my oldest son is heading off to college next week. And about a month ago, 2 months ago, maybe, I had a conversation with an executive at LinkedIn who's really focused on AI and just the evolution of technology. And I asked him, what advice would you give a freshman in college when they're deliberating about their major and what they want to be when they grow up? And his advice was teach that kid how to be human, teach him how to make eye contact, teach him how to have a conversation, how to network with someone over a meal, not just over a phone or text. And I think that when you take that idea and you bring that in, it is so obvious in the warehousing environment where people can be treated like cogs in a machine or treated as a number. I think that aspect of seeing people as humans and earning their trust, trusting them back is a big component of the workforce right now.
Yeah. And I think that's such a big thing as well, because I teach as an adjunct professor and I teach, Gen Z students. And I do see like there's some struggle there, right? To have that connection to, try to give them certain opportunities, right? And, come to like a networking event or something. And it's like, some of them do well, but some of them definitely, it's like a frozen moment, right? It's like, what do I do? What do I talk about? What do I say? And it's just like, I'm looking for an internship. Like that's the only thing that comes out. Right? Yeah. But then, like, how do you build that relationship? Yeah.
And like, I'm going to guess we're in the same generation. And when you think about it, like they've missed these little moments that we have. I mean, when you used to call a friend, you had to get past the friend's parents first if you wanted to talk to your friend.
Yeah.
And now it's like just a quick text. And I think it's just what these younger kids are being exposed to. And it's going to show up in the workforce. It's already showing up. But I think more and more, the more we can just work on those human skills and use that to aid how technology plays a role, it's just becoming more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. And so that kind of leads into, you talk about this idea of like small moments that are building culture, right? So tell us a little bit about what do you mean by that, and what are these potential small moments, and how do they lead up to something bigger?
Yeah, I mean, I think an example of a small moment would be, a leader, however they get this information, they are committing to having a relationship with their employees. And I'm not saying that the CEO and the forklift driver need to have an intimate relationship, but that's where management and these levels and layers come in. The more you can take the time to know little things about your employees, the more trust you're going to form and the better retention you're going to have. And that's really what it comes down to, is the retention. So, think of a situation, especially in a facility where somebody gets a call and their child is sick at school and needs to be picked up right away. Now, if that individual goes to their supervisor and says they have to leave, and that supervisor didn't even know that this person was a parent, it's going to be a bit of a different conversation. There might be a little bit of pushback or resistance, or it might be a harder conversation versus, if that supervisor one day walked through the facility and said, "Hey, how was your weekend?" "Oh, it was great. I took my kid to the park." "Oh, you have a kid? How old's your kid?" "I have kids too." And it's just finding those tiny little moments of connection. So then when that person's, kid's school calls and they need to leave, there's more trust. There's a backup plan. There's more opportunity for flexibility. And when I talk about flexibility in a facility setting, it's not working remote. It's not working hybrid. Like we get that these people need to be there
Yeah.
physically. It's having flexibility to say, can I come in early tomorrow because I need to leave for this emergency or whatnot. So it's those little micro moments, finding opportunities to just connect with people, know a little bit more about them to build that trust, which will lead to them, being more productive, will lead to less errors, will lead to more collaboration, because we all know that happy employees work harder, work smarter, and it's just about seeing them as a human.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are great examples and great points there, and see more and more people desiring that flexibility, right? And you mentioned there earlier in the conversation that you've seen candidates where they've turned down because they don't agree about the ethics of the company or other reasons. I mean, that's where I think like that culture becomes such a differentiator, right? And being able to not only like retain the talent you have, but then attract like top talent as well. So, but that's not necessarily always such a tangible thing, right? The idea of culture. So tell us a little bit about like from your perspective, culture is a huge part, right? And something that we talk about all the time, right? We have a culture of flexibility, or we have a culture of safety, or, culture this, culture that. But how do you kind of put emphasis on the culture and figure out how does it kind of make a difference on the bottom line of the organization to make sure that some of these efforts are true and going to get buy-in?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you think about business in general, it's always about the bottom line. And there's always this idea of, is it profit over people or people over profit? But I truly believe that the bottom line is stronger when leadership starts with employees. So we all think like the customer is always right. We have to take care of the customer. If you get to your customer through your employees, it's going to be 10 times more effective. And I'm going to share an example with you, totally unrelated to our industry,
Sure.
but I talked about this on LinkedIn today. I had a minor procedure at a hospital last week locally. It was not a big deal. I actually felt silly at how much attention the hospital staff gave me because it was such a minor procedure. And I get home, and 2 or 3 days later, I get this card in the mail that I'm holding up for you. And it's a signed card by every person that was involved in my case that day. The nurse, the anesthesiologist, the front desk person. And this is how this company got to me. Like, I've never had an allegiance to a hospital or a health system, but to see they must take such good care of their employees that their employees passed it on to me. And as a patient, I felt cared for. I didn't have any, connection to the leadership team, or I don't know their mission statement, but they're living their mission statement in a way that it naturally flows down to me as the end customer. Now, is this part of their process? Probably. Is it, something that they had to check the box before they could close my case? Maybe. But as the customer, I'll tell you that next time I have a choice, I felt seen by this team. And I think it's the same thing when we're talking about our industry. It starts at the top, but the way to your customers' loyalty, to their satisfaction, to their hearts is going to be through your employees. And when you look at culture in a warehouse, it's not just about compensation. It's not just about the hours you're working. It's about the flexibility we talked about, safety, respect. And I think a lot of that shows up with metrics. It's going to be how productive the team is. An engaged team is going to work faster. A team that is collaborating is going to have more fun. A team that feels motivated is going to make fewer errors. So they're going to be more adaptable when you have new processes or new technology coming in. And I think that starts at the top. So my advice for leaders is make time for your people. And something I do is I carve out 15 minutes every quarter. I spend 15 minutes with everyone on my team. Granted, I have a small team of 20 people, but in any capacity, I spend time with my team members to say, let's put away the metrics. Let's put away your production numbers. How are you? How is your family? How is your weekend? Do you have anything exciting coming up that you want to share? And I'm not expecting them to share their life secrets with me, but just enough that as a leader, I can serve them. I can support them. I can treat them like a human. And I think that's something that's, getting lost a lot in business today because we are so concerned about production. We're so concerned about that bottom line that we kind of bypass what brings the bottom line, and it's people. And so I know that was a bit of a long-winded tangent, but it starts with leadership. It goes through the employees, and that's where the customers are going to feel your culture, feel your company's values, your mission statement. It's got to be something that is ingrained in the organization.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that's a great example too. Because even when you pulled out that card and said that, I'm like, wow, I've never gotten anything like that from a hospital or a doctor or anything like that. Yeah,
I was blown away.
Yeah,
and it probably took 30 seconds and the cost of a stamp.
Yeah, and very, very nice gesture, and obviously, made a difference because you're talking about it now with others, and others are going to be like, oh, I want to check out this hospital too, right?
Exactly.
Get this nice care. So very interesting there, and I think that's so relatable, especially to like the 3PL industry. I think because they have their customers, which are our clients, but then they're delivering to their customers, right, at the end of the day. And, they need to be able to ensure like that experience is going to be good for their customer to make sure that their customer wants to continue to work with them, right? So, I mean, such a good kind of little lesson in there about, taking care and making sure that the employee is taken care of so the employee can take care of the customer at the end of the day. So it's a really, really good tip there. So, as we close out this conversation, people that are out there and they're looking for a position, what is kind of like the number one tip right now for you to give out to people who are looking to try and get past the, we see now like on LinkedIn, right? Like it's like 100 plus applicants in the last like 24 hours, right? And you're kind of like, how am I even going to get through this, right? Like what is the one tip for you for candidates right now to kind of get through the noise and get some eyes on their resume or application?
Yeah, you've got to market yourself, and you're exactly right. I mean, as recruiters, you should see what our inboxes look like. It's like we post a job, and within 24 hours, we have 1,000 resumes, and 900 of them have no connection to the job because technology makes it so easy. So my advice is I'm going to go right back to like being human, leveraging your relationships, leveraging your network. Like you said earlier, like it's all sales. And at the end of the day, you have to sell yourself. You have to market yourself. I find that if a candidate applies to a role we have posted and then does the work to figure out the poster of that job, who posted the job description or who might be on the hiring team, it's that one connection point where someone sends the DM on LinkedIn and says, I just applied to the job and, I wanted to follow up and be on your radar. And it's that simple. It's like almost just taking it a step further. If you really are interested, yes, apply to the job, but maybe start commenting on the hiring manager's posts on LinkedIn or connect with your neighbor who knows someone at that company. And I think at the end of the day, right now, the hiring market is very reliant on who you know, not what you know. And I'm not going to say who you know, meaning you got to be born with a silver spoon and know the president of the company. Yeah. You may know a friend of a friend. You may know a recruiter. You may know someone who's once done business, but leveraging those relationships and really bringing out those human skills is it's going to be the fastest way that I can determine you are a real candidate versus a bot. So take those extra efforts and look to make a connection where you can.
Interesting. And I love that advice, definitely. And you have a large presence on LinkedIn, right? Very, very active. So when you say like, find the poster and send them a message or start commenting on their post, what do you think should be like in that messaging, right? Because I think people often are like, let me just tell them like, hey, I'm interested in the job, right? But like, how do you think that approach should be?
I think if I think about it as like truly selling, it's hitting on the pain points and like sales 101. If you see that a job is open, you can imagine what is that company losing by not having that position filled, and how much business, how much time are they wasting because they have a vacancy on their floor. So I think it's really playing into like, I see that this is a pain point for you, and here I am to solve your problem. I would almost position it the same way you would approach any sales pitch, that it's not me. It's more about your problem, and I'm here with a solution, and this is how I'm going to help you. I also think when we're talking about human connection, there's those little things that get people's attention. If we have a common connection and you mention it in your first email, I'm going to perk up. If you start something and say we went to the same college or we once lived in the same city, I'm going to pay attention. One, because it's relevant to me and you just hit on something that I care about. But two, because it shows me you did your research and it shows me you took 3 minutes, which is more than the average job seeker takes. So it's just about those little things.
The small moments again. Right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. And I love that advice and really appreciate you sharing with us and coming on the podcast today to talk about some of this stuff, about what's going on in the hiring market and some good tips as well for our audience and for those seeking or those hiring as well. So if people maybe need a little more assistance with that and they want to get in touch with you or your team, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, if you are hiring or you're looking for a position, reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can find me and my team members, our company. We put a lot of content out there around helping, job seekers prepare for their search, but also helping hiring managers start a search, manage the whole hiring process appropriately. And we'd love to hear from you. I'll stress that we focus mostly on professional and executive level roles. But even if we are working with someone who has a different need, we usually have a connection and can put them in touch with the right firm.
All right. Fantastic. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here. So Charlie, thank you once again for joining me on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.